Good evening, all. Glad y'all braved the rain to join us this evening. If you will grab your hymn books, please. Hymn 511, The Solid Rock. We'll sing verses 1, 2, and 4. 511. If you will stand, please. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly lean on Jesus' name. On Christ the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand. When darkness seems to hide His face, I rest on His unchanging grace. In every high and stormy gale, my anchor holds within the veil. On Christ the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand. When dark shall come with trumpet sound, oh, may I then in Him be found, dressed in His righteousness alone, blessed to stand before the throne. On Christ the solid rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. All other ground is sinking sand. Hymn 524. 524. We'll sing this through both verses. Seek ye first. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Alleluia, alleluia. Ask and it shall be given unto you. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and the door shall be opened unto you. Alleluia, alleluia. And hymn 530. 530. I'd rather have Jesus. We'll sing all three verses. 530. I'd rather have Jesus than silver or gold. I'd rather be His than have riches untold. I'd rather have Jesus than houses or land.
cross and let him lead. And to be the King of a vast domain, or be held in senseless way. I'd rather have Jesus than anything this world affords today.
Karen, will you have me to a word of prayer, please?
Almighty Heavenly Father, we just come to you this evening, praising your name, bringing you our worship, our love to you, Lord, as we come to hear about your word through our pastor. Lord, we pray that you would just give him the words to speak to our hearts, that you would give us hearts to receive this word, that we would go about from here, Lord, being just your servants, God Father, witnesses to your truth. We love you so much, and it's in Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen.
In the weather that we're having tonight, I appreciate the fact that so many of you came out. David has been on a mission trip with disaster relief in Vermont, and he is going to come in just a moment and share with you about the service that he rendered there and how God used him and how God used others that were affected in the floods that they were having. Just a couple of quick stories before he comes, both in relation to the idea of service. We were, Pam and I, as you know, because we've been gone a couple of weeks, and I appreciate David and others that put in for me preaching. And we were in Paris for 5 days, and I guess it was our second or third afternoon there, and so we had decided to walk down to the Eiffel Tower, and that was 3 or 4 miles one-way walk. So we walked to the Eiffel Tower and along the Seine River for a little bit, and then we decided that we wanted to try to get home before dark. Now, Sally had Sarah and Brett of us had kind of filled anything in about Paris and about our trip in general. What they didn't tell us was that it does not get dark till after 10 o'clock at night. And because they're so much further north in the summertime, and so we were trying to get adjusted, and I mean, our bodies were just all out of whack. But we were coming back, and there was this an enormous amount of steps going up this hill to what they call the Palace of Justice, and there's all these young people that have come out on this particular evening. I believe it was a Friday evening there, all sitting on the steps everywhere. I mean, there are thousands of people. This is what they do after work on Friday evening. Everybody comes to this particular area looking at the Eiffel Tower, and they just socialize. They sit and talk, or sit and have a picnic supper, or whatever it may be. And as we're walking up the steps, on several of the verandas, there were music groups. People who just set up shop, set up all of their instruments and all of their sound equipment, and were putting on a show for anybody that wanted to come. And what was interesting is we made our way up to the top of one of the biggest tracks. We go over there, they've got bigger tracks. And so we go over, and lo and behold, it is an evangelical church. And what they are doing is they are doing the worship songs. Now they're singing in French, but Pam and I knew every song they sang because it was songs that we all sing together on Sunday morning, and they were singing worship songs overlooking the Eiffel Tower with at least 1,000 people gathered around them listening to them sing. It was just absolutely amazing. And I thought to myself, I said, here's somebody who figured out how do we reach this city? How do we reach all these young people? And this is one of the ways, through service of worship, that they are able to reach people and tell them about Jesus. And that was a very awe-awakening moment for me. It was a very moving moment for me. As we stood there Lord Jesus, we thank you so much for the rain that you've given us this summer. So many summers before have been dry and barren. And we pray and ask you for it tonight. So it is appropriate for us to pray and thank you for it. We thank you for your goodness to us. We thank you for the service heart that David has, home, counsel, that so many in our church have that work in ministry areas here as well as abroad. We pray, Father, that our hearts will be uplifted and blessed tonight as we hear David speak from the service, Father. In Christ Jesus' name we pray.
Is that good? Okay, I'm going to start off with a little bit of scripture. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, and I'm just going to read the first 6 verses. It says, "If I speak with the tongue of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy, and I can fathom all the mysteries and all the knowledge, and I have the faith that can move mountains, but if I do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all the power to the poor, all my possessions to the poor, and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but I do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, and it keeps no records of wrong." Actually, Chuck's opening thing, I didn't realize he was going to do this, but one of the things about disaster relief when you enter a place, you are treated like the Allies when they entered Paris or they entered Luxembourg. You are the savior. You're the army that's coming in that is saving people and relieving them from some type of evil. Not always. God calls us and sends us out where He needs us. We're not always welcome when He sends us out. I taught this before the other day when I was teaching about the number of people in Vermont who are churched. 3%. And that's all the religions. That's just not Christianity. That's any type of religious service. Vermont, Maine, and New Hampshire tithes is the lowest. We definitely got the feeling that many times we wasn't welcome there. I told y'all about the bumper sticker on the guy's truck. One thing that I always do, or did at one time, now it's getting hard to find postcards, but I always sent my nieces and nephews postcards of every trip I made. And I actually found some Vermont postcards. Well, the first night that I did some for my children and my nieces and nephew, I walked to the post office to deliver them. There was a group of young people standing outside the convenience store, and I said, "How y'all doing tonight?" And I walked a few more steps, and one guy said, "What did you say?" I said, "Y'all having a good night?" He said, "I cut you up, you come back down my street." So I went to the post office, I dropped the stuff in, I turned around, I looked at them, and I started walking back, and they parted. And I told them, "Y'all have a blessed night," and I went back. But that was the population there. So God does tell you, He sends you, but a lot of times you are not welcome at some of these places. It was amazing. This trip itself was so amazing in so many different ways and so different than any other disaster relief trip I've taken. And one thing, keep my microphone on. Let me try this side. How's that? Okay, this is our trip when we first got there. We arrived at the church that we was given. Why is this thing not looking? Huh? Oh, that's in Chuck's. He just stretched it. we arrived at the church that was on our address. And we got there was nobody to greet us. So we waited and waited, nobody showed up, so we called, and they said, "You're supposed to be at Dallas Baptist Church." I said, "No, we got the paper here. We're supposed to be at the Community Baptist Church." They said no, so we went to Dallas, and we got there, they had a shower unit for us. And this is the team we got there, and the shower unit was in Pennsylvania, New Jersey area, so that was neat. Okay, you can turn to the next slide. That's Alan. Maple ice cream in Vermont. It is the best tasting thing you will ever eat. Go ahead. Okay, there's the shower unit again. Nice hot water waiting on us. And we at Dallas. And when we get there, I said, okay, we at Dallas. We don't know why we at Dallas. It was like 15 miles away from where we were supposed to be. But we was there. And this is the church with the bell. Okay, you can go. Next one. And there's the front of the church as we unloading our stuff. And there's our bedroom in the sanctuary. And the next morning, when the youth pastor brought us the bagels and stuff for our breakfast, we asked him, said, you know, how did we end up here instead of the community church? And what happened was Dallas had lost their pastor. And they were having trouble getting a pastor, so they asked the people at the Community Baptist Church to fill in with some of the associate pastors and the youth pastor to fill in. Well, after 2 years, they still didn't have a pastor. So the suggestion was that they join churches. And they said, well, we do it under one condition. Our church got to remain in service. They said, okay, we can do that. So what they're doing with Dallas Baptist Church is it's going to be a full-time daycare and a way station for disaster relief. They are remodeling the church now and going to turn it into like a mini bread and breakfast and stuff, so disaster relief teams can come and go. And you're going to see later in Pennsylvania another place that's 5-star hotel. I remember when I talked about this, some of this stuff y'all heard for. The first set of disaster relief that we went to that you had to stay overnight, we stayed in the church, we put our sleeping bags, air mattress down, we slept, we got up the next morning, we left. No shower, no breakfast, we just got up and left. Now, it's amazing what the Southern Baptist Convention is doing with the way stations and stuff that you can stay over. But we'll talk about that later. This is the restaurant we ate at that night, a little Italian restaurant. The first group of people that I saw when we got to Vermont was Beaver Dam. Seems like everywhere I go, Beaver Dam is there or they coming. The Seneca unit is one of the more active units. A team from Georgia did a lot of work on one of the Presbyterian churches there. They had a huge organization. The New England, Vermont disaster relief. Okay, hold it right here for a minute. Y'all know the history of disaster relief. We got hit by a person by the name of Hugo, and Hugo hit us hard. Texas and Oklahoma came to South Carolina. Texas started disaster relief. They came here. Bill, Randy Kramer, and that group, they trained them, and that's how our disaster relief started. Back in 2011, Vermont, this same area of Vermont, got hit by a flood. We sent teams there. A few months later, some gentlemen, some of y'all may know, Jerry Gardner, Earl Harner, some people like that, Randy Kramer, they went to Vermont. There was 8 Baptist churches in Vermont. They trained the Vermont people, and they started the Southern Baptist Disaster Relief in Vermont. So you see how it grows and it continued, but actually our association was the ones that helped create the Vermont Disaster Relief team. Okay? There's another team from New Jersey, New England, Pennsylvania, New Jersey works together. That's the field kitchen at the command post. That's where our main headquarters was, the municipal auditorium. Okay, this was outside the command post. It says, "For I know the plan I have for you." This is the Lord declaration. "Plan for your welfare, not for disaster, and to give you future and hope." That was their motto for the New England Disaster Relief Team, and they had those signs everywhere in the area. Okay, our meeting, we getting our marching orders. Had as many women as we did men on this team. It's about a 50-50 split. This is the church we stayed at. They pronounce it Barry. B-A-R-R-E, but they pronounce it Barry, Free Will Church. They also had, twice a week, they had cookouts where they fed the community. And that's what was going on when we got there, okay? And as you can see, the people there with the cookout. You see some other disaster relief team. Ohio was the feeding unit at the church. One thing about Ohio, for y'all to remember the Kentucky field trip, we had started with a contract with this feeding company, international food, stuff like that. And I told you how great the meals was. The meals didn't show up. The first time we went to Mississippi during Katrina, we was in Columbia, Mississippi. The Red Cross sent the food to Columbia, South Carolina. I'm sure that's a simple mistake. Red Cross is a very competent organization and stuff. But the food never arrived. They called, with the food. It's coming. It's going to be there. So every morning after breakfast, the feeding unit would have to go to Walmart and put a menu together. And they did a fabulous meal. And then the next day they called, the food's coming. Off the Walmart, another one. So those people did a great job of putting menus together every day for our breakfast and our dinner. So we took bagged lunches to the job sites there. Okay, that's the entrance to the church. Kentucky was there. Okay, that's some more of the people at the cookout. You see the Georgia team and the Kentucky team in the background. There's the little gym area. That's where we ate our meals, and that's all the units getting together. You notice the most important thing, before the food's ready, the coffee's ready. You got to have the coffee. So everybody's sitting around talking, socializing. You know, this is just a big fellowship. You have teams from all over the country and even all over the world there. And it's just a big fellowship, socialization. You really do get to meet a lot of brothers and sisters in Christ from all over the country. Okay? There's the cooking unit. In that little small kitchen, they was feeding 200-300 people a day out of that small kitchen. Billy Graham was there. Samaritan Purse was there, and I got to pitch them later. I didn't realize Samaritan Purse does the rebuild, the mud out, the chainsaw, and that type stuff. But the Billy Graham organization does the chaplaincy. So even though they under the same roof, they actually do separate things. Everybody from the Billy Graham was the chaplains, and the Samaritan Purse people actually did the work. Okay, this is the house when Norman and I went and we did the house. You see the yellow sticker? They actually have 3 types of stickers. Green mean we need to do work, but people can still live there. Yellow, we need to do work, but you can't live there. If it's red, they say skip it. It's going to be condemned. So the first thing you do is you check and see the sticker and stuff. But you can see where the mud has come up to the bottom. You can see some weathering and stuff. You can also see where the roof. Now, that wasn't from the flood. That's just from lack of maintenance. Okay. This is the back. It's completely washed away. That wall. The lady actually had a ice cream store out of her house and stuff, but it had completely washed away that wall. That metal thing is her large freezer section. You can see the little sink part and stuff. You can see where the family had already started packaging and throwing stuff. You can see the black mud that just kind of washed in. Okay. That's the side of the house where it just kind of washed the siding away. And that's the street. The whole roads are just covered in mud. Shipping containers smashed up against the house. The owner said they're not even sure where they came from. There was no shipping containers in the neighborhood until after the flood. And they just kind of showed up. They threw in the back of his house. And here's the doorway to the second room in the basement. About 4 feet high. We had to get mud out of there. We had to get workmen down in there. That's another side of the street. The house next door was a veterans group that I'm going to talk about later. Was working in that house. There's a shipping container. It's on top of some poor kid's bicycle. Okay, you see the water line. That's how high the water got in this neighborhood. You can always, anytime you have a flood, you're going to have a water line somewhere. And that is how high the water got. Okay, we had church service on Sunday. We actually attended church before we went out and worked Sunday afternoon. And one of the songs they sung, Father, you are the king over the flood. I didn't know if they picked that particularly for this situation, but I will be still and know you are God. So even what they were suffering, they was recognizing they knew who God was and God was in control. Okay, there's another, that's the Green Mountain Baptist Association. That was also part of the New England, Vermont, New Hampshire. So a lot of these, up north, they very few Baptist churches. So a lot of these states have to get together for their associations. Okay, there's us. Okay. That's the second room to the basements and the steps that we had to bring the mud out. The first room was still wet. I mean, it was like you stepped in and you got stuck. So we had to do this room first. This mud was fairly dry, but it required a bucket brigade to get the buckets up. What we did was we filled the buckets, we hauled them up, we hauled them across the room, and then we started dumping them. But we had to get up and down the steps. Okay, you can keep going. That's one of the last rooms we did. We kind of like slid stuff in there as the family went through the stuff they wanted to save. That's the kitchen. All the stuff had to go out. We pulled all the sheetrock out because it has wickered up. Even though the water didn't go that high, once the water gets into the insulation, it just kind of sucks it up, and the black mold gets into the whole wall. So all the cabinets had to go. All the sheetrock had to go. There's one of the volunteers. We had several times we got help from different volunteers. This was some young girls. Well, not all of them were girls. One of them was 56. Of course, at my age, even 56 is young. But even the girls digging the mud, and you can see where she's digging and how deep the mud is. In some places, the mud came about halfway up my thigh. And the thing when we say we took mud out a bucket at a time, we basically took it out like a quarter of a bucket if it was wet mud, a half a bucket if it was dry mud. Because even a quarter bucket of wet mud runs about 40, 45 pounds. Okay? There's again, that might have been Thomas because he had a full suit on. But digging the mud, loading the buckets. That's me digging. That's before I had a suit. I learned real quick that I needed a suit on. But those suits does get hot. But those digging, all that stuff came out. There's the Virginia team. They showed up the day after we did. West Virginia showed up. In fact, our white hat was from West Virginia. One of the best white hats I ever worked for. The New York team sent the laundry unit. The lady in the sunglasses is actually with the New York team. The lady in the back in blonde hair is from Pickens. So it was another South Carolina unit. And they worked together, and the New York team left, and the Pickens unit took over. But they left their trailer there because it takes a lot to haul a trailer from South Carolina all the way to Vermont, especially those big shower trailers. This is the sanctuary where we bedded, and again, that's how you do it. You put your bed down wherever you can put it, and the sanctuary becomes a bedroom. I had ice duty one day. They said, you want to help with the ice? I said, yeah, I help with the ice. I didn't know they were going to stick me in a freezer truck. And I was going to be handing ice out to everybody that showed up. But yeah, I had ice duty one day, so I was in a freezer truck for about an hour and a half, passing out ice as you went out in the morning. Those are the veterans. This is a veteran group. They do disaster relief work, and they have members from all over the world. And they just send a call out, and the people just show up that can. And we work with them from around the corner. I had heard about Rubicon before, and I had seen the red shirts in the past, but this is the first time we actually was able to talk to some of the guys. They say most of them are war veterans, but some of them have never had wartime service, but it's a veterans group that strictly does this voluntarily. Okay? That is one of my mud piles. Mud moves. You pile it up, and next thing you know, it's kind of like, who remember the movie The Blob? That's how it is. You sit around, all of a sudden you step in it and you're stuck. Because the mud is coming after it. It resents being taken out of its home, and it's coming after you. And it moves, and it smells. But every now and then the city would come by and haul off my mud pile. I thought maybe after the week everybody would get to see how big our mud pile was, but they kept hauling it off. But it will move up and it will sneak on. Well, only one time did I get both books stuck where somebody had to help me out because I couldn't get out. Okay. Again, that's a better light of the basement of what we had to crawl up to get the mud out. Okay. And there's the buckets that we use to fill up. And this is the first time that I've ever really done real mud out. I always heard about mud out. I have removed mud from like the floors of houses before. You just take like a scraper and you just kind of scrape it up, and then you pull the floor up. This is the first time I ever had to do a basement mud out. Other people have done it before. But again, you can see how high it is from, what we have left. I'm just having so much trouble with this thing today. Okay? The broom. Our first night there, when they give you a briefing, and again, some of y'all have heard this, they told us, 3 things you have to watch out in Vermont, in this area of Vermont, because it's heavily infested. Witches, ghosts, and demons. So I guess this was one of the witches parked their broom there. I'm not sure. But we were joking. It was funny. The 4 of us that went out to the back to start the mud outing and the dumping of the mud, we walked around the corner. We all stopped at the same time. We saw that broom. Said, might be real. But I figured there we eating our lunch. We set it up in the little side of the road, and we just ate right on the site. You always eat your lunch on the site. Some of them still got the white suits on from the mudding. Okay. There's the debris that is coming out of the people's houses. As a child, I always heard about house fires. Well, I lived at, we never had floods. You always heard about house fires. And I always thought house fires was the most horrible thing that could happen to a person. But fire is clean. Fire take everything. When you do mud out, you're throwing people's lives away. And you got to be real sensitive about that. And you also got to be real sensitive what people think is important. A child who died at the age of 9 of leukemia, and everything those people have of that child is being thrown out now. Anything they have, their love letters to each other as they was dating, being thrown out. So it is hard, and most of the times, the people don't even come. They tell you, throw away what has to be thrown away, save what you can. I'm putting it in yours and God's hand, and they leave. The people here actually stayed and helped us. And it was one of the few times we actually developed a relationship with the couple there. And we developed a great relationship, and it's going to be and why did God send us? I don't know why God sent the Georgia team, the West Kentucky team, the Virginia team, the North Carolina team, but we discovered real quick why God sent our unit to this family. But that is their life being thrown away, and it's hard. And it gets emotional, not just for the family, but it gets emotional for the workers. You run across stuff that you know is going to... And one team was telling that they were throwing the stuff out that was covered in black mold. The lady was going behind them pulling stuff out. So they quit throwing it outside the house. They actually started carrying it up the hill and throwing it to keep her from going through and taking the black mold stuff back into the house and stuff. So sometimes you have to go above and beyond because the people just can't let go of the stuff. And it is heart-wrenching. Okay? A mobile home into somebody's shed. Again, Don said he didn't know who mobile home that was. Trailer, what do you call it? The things you hook to your back of your car when you go on vacation? They're not mobile homes. Huh? Campers. Yeah, somebody's camper. He said he'd never seen that camper before. He don't know where it came from. I found out real quick that dumping, and mud don't dump. You pick the bucket up, you turn it, and then you wait. The mud come out when it wants to come out. It don't come out. It kind of oozes and plops out. And I learned real quick that repetition of dumping will lead to that. I got smart the next day. Alternated arms. You know what that meant? When I pulled my shirt off the next day, both arms were like that. But yeah, that was my arm. Okay, Carpentry Hand Ministry from New England showed up, another team. Of course, the Salvation Army was there. Another independent Christian organization called Enough showed up, and they had their own disaster relief team. This is a local team that showed up working with us. Again, that was and these were the people that mainly was feeding the community. This was at the command center, the Pennsylvania, New Jersey. And, you know, there'd been times when you come out for your lunch. I remember one year we went on a trip. We had Mennonites to the right of us, Jehovah's Witnesses to the left of us. And we all came out one big fellowship to share our lunch together. Okay? That's the command center. Okay? This is the brains of it. This lady is coordinating all of our jobs for us. Okay? And this is the other command team. The guy standing is Roger. He was one of the white hats. And the guy sitting is Roy, the guy from West Virginia. And I mean, he was unreal. I mean, as soon as he meets people, he knows their names. He knew the people in the community names. Every time you turn around, you saw Roy. I don't know how he could be in so many places at one time. But he was just amazing. Luther. This was just like a half a block down from where we were working. We saw him grab stuff off the truck of the Dollar General that was across the street from us and kind of got away. He must have stashed the stuff because he came back and he hit the convenience store next door, and that's when the cops caught him. Basically what they did was they gave him a citation, gave him a court date, and released him. Okay? There we are eating lunch with the Billy Graham people. These are the blue shirts with the Billy Graham chaplains. They came by checking on them. The guy sitting down in the blue shirt, that's Don. That's the homeowner. Retired military, drill sergeant, retired deputy sheriff in that area, originally from Georgia. Don was raised Southern Baptist in Georgia, went to Awanas, all this stuff. Started running into some bad luck when he was in the military, got mad at God. Kind of got away from the church, but still considered himself a Christian. Later on, his wife died of cancer, and he was really mad at God, and all of a sudden he was no longer a Christian. He felt like that there would be no God who would put him through all the trouble he went to, so he completely turned his back on God. Okay? We didn't have any steps to get the mud out of the second room. And as you can tell, the walkway isn't that high. So we got smart. We took a game sled, and a game sled, well, y'all hunters probably know, but in the snow, when you kill something, they don't carry them out like we do. They put it in a sled and drag it out. So we got a game sled, and we put some rope to it, and we made us a little slide, and we do 4 buckets at a time, okay? This guy came from the Virginia group with his guitar and stuff, and every morning before our morning devotional and our evening devotional, he led us in song. So I thought that was kind of neat. So this is doing one of our devotionals. And I'm going to get in this later on. One of our guys overheard the women in our group talking about giving us names. We didn't know what they was talking about, so we thought we'd pull a fast one on them. So we gave all the women in our group names based on the Charlie Brown characters, and we developed personalities based on the cartoon characters. They outdid us. The guy that was spying was not a very good spy, and he didn't get all the information, but I can get to that later. But these are all the women in our group and the Charlie Brown characters that we hooked them up with. Okay? They're the Samaritan Purse people with the orange shirt. One thing about and that's the, you can go ahead. You can go to the next. That's the veterans group. But one thing about our shirts, when we got there, one of the Red Cross people came up to us. He said, when I first saw the gold shirts a couple of weeks ago, he said, I broke down and cried. He said, because not only did I know help was coming, I knew love and compassion was coming. He said, you don't get that from the secular, the Red Cross, the United Way, all these other people. You don't FEMA, you don't get that. He said, but as soon as you see the gold shirts, you know compassion and love is coming. And that's the reputation. When people see these shirts, that's what they see. They don't see people doing mud out and rebuild it. They see compassion and love. That's what we bring people. That's part of my message of the Bible verse. If you want to go into disaster relief, you better have love first. Because that's what the people are looking for, and that's what the people in disaster relief we expect from everybody there. If you don't love these people, stay home. Send us a check and stuff. Because you got to have love, because that's what these people are looking at when they see us. They see love and compassion. Okay? Again, more debris being piled up. This is another restaurant we ate at. Okay? Now, can you blow this picture up with this gentleman in the middle? Can you stretch it? You can't? Okay, the gentleman that's walking up here, that's Pete. Pete became a Christian at 65. He became an ordained minister at 83. Are you going to be preaching when you're 83? This is how the economy is. He is 86 years old. This is his first disaster relief trip. He was a rookie at 86. You're not too old. Now, he wasn't down in the basement budding with us. But he was taking care of the trailer. He did the first aid for us that got nicked and cut and bruised and bumped into stuff. He ministered to the people coming along the street. He made sure we had water. We ran out of water, stuff like that. He jumped in the car. He went and got it. So nobody is too old. Nobody is too old for this. That we can find places for you to work and serve God on a disaster relief trip. You know, in the Army, they say for every guy on the front line, they 10 people in support. Isn't that about right, Alan? The guy on the front line can't fight the enemy if the 10 people in support's not supporting him. The two most important things you have on a disaster relief, shower units and laundry units. If you can get those 2 units there, you think, well, they're just doing laundry and they're just watching. A shower unit, because I've worked in disaster relief when you didn't have a shower. You go to bed with that mud and stuff on you. You get up next morning with that mud and stuff on you. And you go to work with it. Laundry units. A 5-day trip. You don't have a laundry unit, you got to pack for 5 days. And what you can do with those dirty clothes? You either got to bring them home with you or you got to get rid of them. A laundry unit, you only got to pack for 2 days. Because they do your laundry every day, and the next day you get your clean clothes back. And you just rotate it out. So those are important. Important units. Okay, there we are at our end of the week meal. We went out and had a nice meal as a family. There's Don and Victoria. Like I said, we really developed a close relationship with this family, and we invited them to our end of the meal with us, and they graced us by coming. Okay. There's Rhonda, who we labeled Lucy, and she was definitely a Lucy. If anybody watched the Charlie Browns, Rhonda was a Lucy. And she's giving out the awards that they gave all the men. Okay? I got the Incredible Hulk Award. I can't wait to get to the gym to all these bodybuilders. I got the Incredible Hulk Award. Based on the amount of mud and buckets that I dump. You know, that's one thing about that dumping of the buckets. Every now and then somebody would show up to help me. They'd help about 20, 30 minutes, and all of a sudden they had to do something. They never show back up. You know, it was just me back there. Okay, there's another South Carolina guy unloading a truck with supplies. All the restrooms in Vermont, except the ones in the churches, no matter where you went, restaurants, buildings, anywhere, they had no men restrooms, no female. All the restrooms in Vermont was labeled that way. Okay, now we come in, and some of these are messed up. On the way home, the Baptist Resource Network in Pennsylvania had us laying over. There was our way station coming back. This is the house that they had for us. Okay, that's just the front door. That's the living room. The dining room. Another little break area with the coffee pot. The kitchen, so you could even cook your own meals if you wanted to, or they cooked them for you. A laundry room, so you could wash your clothes and take them clean. And that is just the guidelines and stuff like that. Again, that's how much over the 20-something years that it has really improved. It's almost like going on a vacation now compared to what it used to be. Okay? Unfortunately, there were teens coming and going, and they was full. The only people they could take was the women. Well, they could have took the men, but we flipped, and somehow the men lost, and the women got that. So we went to the East Shore Baptist Church, which wasn't bad. It's a nice-looking church, and they let us sleep in the youth room. That green couch was so comfortable that I started taking it home with me. But we slept. We didn't have to take our bedrolls and stuff out. We had lazy boy chairs that laid back and couches, so we just slept there and didn't have to unpack anything. And they had a kitchen for us, so we could, if we wanted to do some cooking, we could. But we went to a place called Mission Barbecue. Mission Barbecue actually has a place in North Myrtle Beach. I'd never eaten there before. It's like a museum for military and first responders. And you can just flip through this. The food was great, but you can see on the walls. Okay, you got, yeah. I mean, it brings tears to your eyes just being there. And the food was good too. So that helped. It was just touching just being in that place. Okay, now this is us taking the mud off the sled, and we got our Tyvek suits on, and you can see that's me with the orange cap bill sticking out. Loading the truck and stuff like that. And the way we did the sled was we had two people digging underneath and one person loading and unloading the buckets. We'd pull them up. One person would take the buckets off. We would dump them, send them back down. And it actually really speeded up the amount of, we got more work done in one day in the second room than we did the 3 days in the other rooms. Okay, those are more pictures of the house and the debris. Some of these are duplicates because people sent them to me. All the electrical boxes was disconnected. That's all that's going to be replaced. Some of the trailers, some of us. That's the church we stayed at. Okay, hold on right here. You can see the black mold up on this wall. That's how high the black mold had gotten. The floors eventually had to come up once we get everything else done. That's me bringing some mud up. There's Don and Victoria, the homeowners. We're taking a break. Some more pictures of the street, the mud. There's a picture of me doing one of my breaks. That's Thomas and Alvin fooling around. That shows you how much head space we had digging. That's part of the military team that was there, the veterans team. There's our group at the end. Again, that's another one. Feeding unit again. Some of these are duplicates. There's the Presbyterian church that the Georgia team worked at. That's it? Okay. While we were there, again, I told you about Don. When we first met Don, Norm and I went and did the assessment on the house to see what we needed to do and how many days the thing would take it, and we met Don. And we got his history. Don was retired military, combat veteran, retired police officer. I was a veteran. Norman was a veteran. But we really didn't have the combat stuff, and we weren't retired veterans. Thomas in our group was. This is talking about when you talk about relationships with people. We knew Thomas had more in common with Don than anybody else. So we introduced them and said, Thomas, this is your focus this week. You focusing on Don. We explained what Don had told us about his anger and stuff like that. And Thomas was amazing. You know, Thomas worked with me. He would run to hand the buckets to me while I dumped them. One minute I look up, Thomas is handing me buckets to dump. Next minute I'm looking over, he's praying with Don. Next minute I look up, Thomas is handing me buckets. I go, how do you do both and don't seem to miss a beat? But I mean, he prayed and he witnessed and he talked and listened to Don. The last day, when we got together and we're doing our closing prayer, we give the family a Bible with all our signatures on it. Don said, I need to rededicate my life to Christ. And he gave this heart-whelming speech on all of his anger, how he was mad at God, and how he was just so self-centered and stuff, and that, you know, God hadn't forgotten him. All this happened, and, you know, God sends these people all the way from South Carolina and people from Georgia, his home state, to rebuild his adopted town. But then he turned to his wife, and Victoria was his second wife. And he apologized for all the verbal and mental abuse, how he took all his anger out on God, on her, and all these years, how he had been mean to her and didn't show her the love that he should have as a husband. And he just twice I have broke down and cried during a disaster relief trip. This was the second time. The other time was in Mississippi, which is a long story, and I won't take up the time tonight. But it was just so heart-wrenching as he just humbled himself, not only before God, but before his wife, and asked her to forgive him and stuff. And that's when it dawned, this is what God sent us for. The mud, the tear out, and all this other stuff were just an excuse to get there. God needed us there, and he needed something there. I don't know why God sent the other teams there or what. We had 30-something confessions of faith just out of our little group at S Church. Now, they were teams at other churches and stuff, but just out of ours, during the 5 days we was working there, we had that many confessions of faith from a state that only has 3% of the population in church. And in 5 days, we was able to expand God's kingdom that much, and no telling the other teams their confession of faith. But we were sent there for Don and Victoria. And it's so uplifting when the mystery of why you are somewhere or why something happened opens up to you. And it was, you know, to see him humble himself before God and before his wife. I mean, you know, it made all the bruises and the nicks and the cuts and the smell and the mud. It made it all worthwhile. And when we was packing to go home, we had a couple of first-timers. And they came to me and they said, I don't feel right. I go, the mud, not wearing a mask? He said, no. He said, I feel good. They said, I'm supposed to be beaten down and tired. I feel good. And said, that's not what I was expecting. I said, I can tell people. You know, people used to question me when I was in school because doing Katrina, because being a teacher, I could only take my Thanksgiving and my Christmas break to go and the good, and people would go, how can you give up your breaks like that and come back to school and stuff? And nothing against my kids, but I feel better after a week of this, than a week at the beach with my kids. That's when I need an extra day of vacation to recover. But this, you do. And it's so fun to see the newbies who expecting to be broken down and tired and can hardly walk. I'm not going to be able to get out of bed in the morning after doing this 4 or 5 days. And they jump out of bed like they're teenagers. This is something, it's so uplifting. And for y'all who've been thinking about disaster relief, even if you're just thinking about it, go to the training in the spring. I'll give some information on where the training is going to be. We have a training in the spring and one in the fall. And just take introductory. Get your name on the list. And if you don't want to do mud out, tear out, and chainsaw, if you want to do showers, we got a team in Lancaster that needs members. I belong to the Kershaw team. I belong to the Seneca team. I still have membership to an Oklahoma team. We went to Oklahoma one time, didn't have nobody to drive our truck. I called Cliff, and I said, I got a team. We have no tools. He said, you got a car that can make it? I said, yeah. He said, well, go ahead to Cedar Rapids. He said, we'll find you a team. Halfway there, they said, we got an Oklahoma team that need people. We drove to Cedar Rapids, and we worked with an Oklahoma team for the whole week. You know, if you're feeding, child care, communication, chaplains, they all kinds of stuff you can do. You don't have a chainsaw and do the mud out and stuff. Now, if you want to do the mud out and stuff, we can find you. If you like crawling under tight spaces and pulling wet insulation off from underneath a mobile home, we can find you a job for that too. I joke and tell my wife, I said, yeah, after this trip, I've knocked 2 things off on my bucket list. Pulling wet sheetrock off underneath a mobile home, which is what I did in Kentucky, and taking mud out of a basement. Those 2 off my bucket list. I can die in peace now. I've cleaned out my bucket list. Y'all people who wants to go overseas and want to, you know, parachute out of a mountain or go down the Amazon, those are weak bucket list things. You need meaningful bucket list things. Mudding out and pulling wet sheetrock out from these mobile homes and stuff. Those are real bucket list things. But, you know, God will use you for anything you want to do. And I can tell you from over 20 years of doing this, you're not going to feel any better if you went on your perfect vacation. This job will lift you up, and you will meet people, and you will break down and cry some of the happiest tears you ever cried doing this job. And again, Pete's 86 years old, his first disaster relief trip, and it was a mud out. You're not too old. We had a guy there that had a heart condition. They ended up having to go to the emergency room because he started feeling lightheaded and stuff like that. The next day, he's back out working. God said, I don't know what was it. Did you feel okay and stuff? So, you know, it's there for you to serve God. And the great thing about disaster relief, because people like me who are teachers and stuff like that, they may call you 100 times and you can't go. That's fine. It's volunteer. 101 times you might be able to go. So it's not a requirement that you have to go if it's not your time to go. You know, just getting your name on the list and finding you a team to belong to and the fellowship and stuff. You're not going to find anything more uplifting and helping. You are helping people recover their lives. And like you said, when they see this gold shirt, they see love and compassion. They don't see people hauling mud. It's love and compassion is what these people see. And that's what we bring to the world. Even a state like Vermont that only have 3% of people in church. This is what we bring to them. And occasionally somebody might threaten to cut you up. But when they turn around and they see standing behind you 30 or 40 other guys in gold shirts, they think we're a gang. You know, they look and say, they're not blood and crip. I don't know who they are, them to gold, but we ain't going to mess with them. Okay, Chuck, it's yours.